Hello, Fuse Nation. My name is Alex Fuse, the host of Fusion News, and I am on the phone right now with Ed O'Keefe. He is a Washington Post politics reporter. So, Ed, how are you doing today, the day after the big day here in the United States, 4th of July?
I'm doing very well, Alex. Great to be with you.
Yeah, so this is, of course, a busy week for you. What is on tap for this week in the world of politics?
Actually, a little quieter than
Oh,
most
okay.
because Congress is officially
Yeah.
on recess this week, back home, enjoying the holiday break, or perhaps overseas on various trips, or marching in parades, or in many cases, actually avoiding constituents. So what we're trying to do this week is sort of monitor public reaction across the country as especially Republican senators face the music back home. And then also get a sense of what to expect when Congress returns, when the president gets back from his overseas trip, sort of the things that have to get done by Washington, if you will, by the end of the summer, maybe by the fall. There's all sorts of things. Of course, there's the healthcare debate. There's the need to at least begin talking about revamping the tax code. They've got to write a budget by the end of September, or at least come up with a way to fund the government after September 30th. And they've got to reauthorize a bunch of different programs as well. So a lot of tricky stuff for Congress and the White House to figure out in the next few months. And we're trying to get a handle on what to expect as that happens.
So, Ed, what can the American people expect from President Trump's overseas trip this week?
Well, it's kind of a big unknown. The White House hasn't said much. He's doing two big things. He's stopping in Warsaw, Poland, a country that has welcomed American presidents with open arms before. President Obama and President Bush especially made trips there pretty regularly. He stopped for an American president because Poland, of course, is still quite thankful for the protections and the help that we gave them after World War II, and it's seen as one of the better and stronger democracies in Eastern Europe, so it's always a good stop to talk about that issue. From there, he'll head to Hamburg, Germany, where there's the G20 meeting of the 20 largest industrialized economies across the world, and so he's got high-stakes meetings there with a host of world leaders. He's got to talk to the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, for the first time since he became president. He has another meeting with the Mexican president, Enrique Peña Nieto, the first time they'll meet since Trump became president. Remember, they canceled the meeting they were going to have in January over the disputes about the border wall. So they're going to perhaps make nice, or perhaps it'll be another awkward exchange for the president with a world leader. But what he has to do really is sort of demonstrate that the United States is ready to seriously take on the threat from North Korea, perhaps bring up the need to at least consider renegotiating some trade deals, as he often tweets about, make sure that the NATO alliance and these countries are taking their military spending seriously, and in general just project that he is a capable, able, and willing world leader for the United States and for the world. He had a visit to Europe in late May and the Middle East that went pretty well. It was well received on this part of the world, at least. And so I think the White House is hoping that this one is equally well organized, well orchestrated, and that he is generally gaffe prone. I think not only is the meeting with the Russian president worth watching, but maybe also his interactions with the German chancellor, Angela Merkel. They've had a bit of a frosty relationship since he took office, and she's expected to take him to task on a few different issues, especially climate change, and at this meeting in Germany.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's going to be a busy week for President Trump, that's for sure. And what I want to talk about here quickly, we'll switch gears. And a lot of people are talking about, of course, especially President Trump, about fake news. And you, of course, are at a major outlet for news. And I don't want to get too much in depth with it, but what if you had 2 minutes to respond to fake news? Do you believe there is some media bias in the United States?
Well, that's a bit of an open-ended question, Alex. I would say this. Look, this whole issue of fake news is something that not only those of us who are professional journalists have to worry about, but you as consumers have to be conscious of as well. And I think a lot of this gets put on the outlets that provide the news, but I think a lot of it has to be put on the consumers as well. You guys have to be mindful of what it is you're reading, from whom it's coming. Do your homework on that source and whether or not you believe they to be reliable, whether they have a history of reporting information factually. And if they don't, then avoid those sites and look for other ones. If you think they do, then by all means, but also seek out some diversity of views and of ways that the news is delivered. I think too often in this day and age, people are a little too stovepiped, or they sort of are too narrowly focused on certain outlets and certain ways in which maybe they obtain information. And I would encourage, especially your generation, Alex, to not just get their news from their Facebook feed or from their Twitter feed or on Snapchat, but to seek out other websites or even pick up magazines and newspapers and take some time to read them and really explore an issue on one or two sources. It's a really tricky thing for those of us who do this every day to see the work that we do undermined, frankly, by professionals who try to make things look like it's real news when in fact it's not. When it's completely fabricated, and can be easily proven to be fabricated if somebody takes a few minutes to sort of look at the news and realize that in that case that source is not reputable. So, you know, it's a tricky issue that we grapple with every day. We're very concerned about accusations of bias, and that's why we work every day, at least at the Washington Post, to be accurate and fair and to represent all viewpoints, not just one. And certainly we're always going to be accused of being biased by different people, but frankly, if we're hearing from people on the left that we're too conservative and we're hearing from people on the right that we're too liberal, then we're probably doing our job, because it means that we're probably doing and saying things that may not be comfortable or you know, acceptable for certain people to stomach. And that's what fair and accurate and non-biased and non-partisan news looks like. It's sometimes speaking awful truth to people who may not want to hear it.
Well, Ed, you just wrapped that up in the perfect 3 minutes ever that I have ever heard of. So congrats to you on putting it, bundling it up and presenting it to the American people just like that.
You're welcome.
So Ed, before we wrap up the interview, I want to talk about your career. And you, of course, grew up in Delmar, New York. I am located in Rotterdam, New York. I don't know. It's right around here. So what was that like growing up in upstate New York for you?
Well, that's why I wanted to talk to you, Alex, because I can appreciate a fellow upstate New Yorker news junkie in high school like you, because when I was growing up and going to Bethlehem Central High School down in Delmar, just about 20, 30 minutes from you, you know, I would read the Albany Times Union every day. I watched the local news. And that's really all we had. We didn't really have the internet and YouTube the way we do now. I mean, I was a child of the late 90s, so we were still using the phone lines to log into America Online and use AOL Instant Messenger to talk to our friends. And you could only do that for so long before somebody picked up the phone and disconnected you. So I totally appreciate and get what you're trying to do here by working for 518 Sports and by doing this YouTube show. You're trying to demonstrate early on that you've got an interest in the news. And I did some of that in high school. There were a few of us who were part of a locally produced kids news show that aired on our public access station at the Bethlehem Library for a few years. And then I actually sort of started and wrote a family newsletter for my aunts and uncles and cousins across the country that I would mail out once a quarter. And that was kind of the way I started in journalism. And then came to school here in Washington and got an internship at the Washington Post, and the rest is history. And I've been doing it ever since. But all of it started for me up in the Capital Region, and don't get up there nearly as much as I like to, but always encouraging to see that there are kids like you who are eager and willing to experiment with how people get their news. And the fact that you've been able to draw such a sizable and regular audience, I think, is a testament to the fact that you figured out that this is the way that people are consuming the news these days and want to get information. So to your credit, you're taking advantage of the tools that are out there, and I have a feeling that if they'd been out there when I was your age, I probably would have been doing the same thing. So I know where you're coming from.
Thank you. Now, of course, you just talked about your career and working at the Washington Post. I have to ask, what is the hardest part about your job?
Probably the continuous stream of it, the fact that you can't turn the news off. I mean, you can as a consumer or as a viewer or as a reader. You can put it down and you can turn it off, you can walk away from it. But when you're living in the 24/7 news environment, living and working in it, you never can truly escape it anymore. anymore. And the fact that we all carry phones with us or have almost immediate access to our email and the internet, you're never entirely detached. And so that's hard. It's sort of striking the balance between being a journalist and trying to be a husband and a father and a friend and a brother and a son. That is increasingly, I think, if you talk to most journalists, really tricky, is finding the right balance. And I think a lot of us came out of a very intense election season last year, and were thrust overnight, literally overnight, into a very intense new presidency, as all new presidencies are in their own way. I think part of the reason it's so intense is because we don't really live in a 24-hour news cycle anymore. We live in a 24-minute news cycle in many ways. Things change very quickly, and we have to be on top of them. So that's probably the biggest challenge. But I will say this: it is fun. I recommend it to anyone who's willing to be curious and wants to see things and do things that other people don't get to do. The First Amendment gives us a lot of freedoms and a lot of privileges as journalists in this country, and I enjoy taking advantage of it every day and hopefully doing it in a good, fair, and responsible way.
Now, a final question here before we wrap up this interview. What has been your favorite moment in your career working at the Washington Post?
Oh, gosh. There have been a bunch. A few stick out. I spent 6 weeks back in 2011 covering the war in Iraq, and really at that point the war was starting to wind down. But just being able to go to Iraq and see the country and see what the U.S. military was doing will always stick out to me. The other one, because you sort of think back through history about moments that you were there for, one recent one for me was sitting in the hearing room watching the former FBI Director James Comey testify to the Senate Intelligence Committee. That's probably one we'll still be talking about a few years from now. And the other was being in Grant Park on election night 2008 when Barack Obama won the presidency. I was there as a Washington Post, sort of a very junior Washington Post reporter, helping out, and saw that. And that's another one we'll probably still be talking about many years from now. So those ones stick out. But, you know, I've gotten to do all sorts of crazy things. Talk to members of Congress, follow presidential campaigns, fly with presidential candidates. I learned how to drive a mail truck. I met with the guy who figures out when the cherry blossoms are going to bloom in Washington. You get to do all sorts of crazy things when you work here. So a lot of those things stick out. But those three are probably three that stick out most recently.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Ed, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to be talking to you very soon back here on Feuzion News.
Alex, we'll all probably be working for you anyway, so that's why I'm glad to one day. So I'm glad to talk to you now, and hopefully you'll remember that when you're a big star.
Thank you, Ed.
All right, take care.
You too. Okay, Feuzion News, I just wrapped up that interview with Ed O'Keefe from the Washington Post. We talked about what's on tap for this week, what was it like for him growing up here in the capital region at Del Mar, and what his favorite moment was in his career. Well, Feuzion News, Fuse Nation, we have a big week of shows. Meredith Gorman will be on. She's located down there in Boston. We'll be talking about which team is in first place in the AL East. I don't want to say it here, but it is what it is. And also what the Red Sox need to do to possibly win the AL East. That's what we're going to be talking about. And also Jason Lewis, who is an Upstate Sports Says anchor. He's leaving later on this month. We'll be talking to him what it has been like for him here in upstate New York working at CBS 6. It's going to be a big week of shows. I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad that you hopefully had a great 4th of July. Thanks for watching. Be kind to one another, and I will be seeing you very soon. Happy 4th.